Good afternoon, students. You are all welcome to the second online lecture on the course Social Context of Educational Planning. I hope you are all staying safe. The coronavirus is real. Nobody should doubt it. Follow all regulations on how to stay safe. Maintain social distancing. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers. Above all, stay at home. I want to see all of us alive as we resume classes when the whole pandemic is over. On that note, you are welcome to this lecture. This week, we will be looking at sociological perspectives. Sociological perspectives and its educational planning implication. Sociological perspectives and its educational planning implications. Sociological perspectives and its educational planning implications. If you have taken that, then under it we'll be examining the following. Under it we'll be examining the following. 1. The nature and science of human society. The nature and science of human society. The nature and science of human society. After that, we'll take social groups and their classifications. Social groups and their classifications. After that, we'll take sociological theories. Sociological theories or sociological perspectives. Sociological perspectives and their educational planning implication. Sociological perspectives and their educational planning implication. Alright, so first, let's take a look at the nature and science of human society. The nature and science of human society. This will be found in our second textbook. The title is Basic Concepts in Education and Society by Edward-Adiele. In that text, it is found on pages 35. Page 35 of the book. That's where you will find the nature and science of society. Is that again? Alright. Because the course is on social context of educational planning, we first need to examine how the society is formed. How the society is formed. Because the course is on social context of educational planning, we first of all have to examine how society is formed, how society is structured. Because it is the society, the individuals in the society, that helps to structure the society before education can be planned to provide learning activities for those individuals that are found in each type of society. So first, we must understand the meaning and science of society. If that is taken, so let's quickly look at the meaning of society. The meaning of society. The meaning of society. Society has been defined differently by different scholars. There are different definitions provided by scholars. Some of these definitions, we'll look at them. We'll briefly look at some of the definitions. The need to have a look at these definitions is to provide us an idea of what constitutes a society, so that you can understand the different dimensions of society, so that when you look at a society, a group of people, you will be able to know whether they could be classified as a society or not. So that is why a brief explanation of the meaning of society is important here, because it is on that basis that education is planned. Alright, so let's look at some of the definitions. Oboli in 2000 defined society as a group of people who for one reason or the other are living in a particular geographical area. A group of people who for one reason or the other live in a particular geographical area. That is its definition. A group of people who for one reason or the other live in a particular geographical area. So the important thing about Oboli's definition is that one, it's made up of a group of people. Two, those group of people live in a particular geographical area. So the identifying factor there is the geographical area. They live in a designated area. That's Oboli's definition. Then we have another definition by Worsley. Worsley had defined society as a pioneer settlement, a village, a city, a tribe, or a nation. Let me take that again. He sees a society as a pioneer settlement, a village, a city, a tribe, or a nation. Now take note of this. The things you take note here is that in this definition, any settlement, any pioneer settlement, that's people that have lived together for a very long time, people that have come and lived together for a very long time. It could be a village, it could be a city, it could be a tribe, it could be a nation. They are classified as a society. So he goes further to say, wherever the members of any group, could be small, large, live together in such a way that they share one thing or the other in common, that group is called a society. Wherever people live together, they share one or two things in common and stay there and interact among themselves for a long time. That is called a society. But it doesn't also stop there. There are other definitions that try to capture more details of what should be found in a society. Now let's look at the definition by Amakri. Amakri defines society as a relatively independent, self-perpetuating human group which occupies a territory, share a culture, and has most of its association within this group, and have most of its association within the group. Now, in this definition, one thing that is common in all the definition is that a society is made up of people who live together, share things in common, they live in a geographical area, and they interact on daily basis among themselves. You know, they cooperate among themselves, carry out life functions, you know, which includes reproduction, nurturing, sustenance, shelter, defense, and what have you among themselves. These are the common characteristics, the common features that are found within a society. Now, in all the definitions, there are basic elements that must be found in a society for it to be called a society. There are basic elements that must be found in a society for it to be called a society. Those basic elements include the following. Those basic elements include the following. Basic elements that are to be found in a society for it to be called a society. Those basic elements include the following. 1. Population. For any group to be called a society, it must have a population of people. A population of people. That population here is made up of male, female, youths, adults, what have you. A population of people is comprised of individuals, groups in the form of children, youths, adults who are found within a given area. 2. Geographical territory. Geographical territory. Geographical territory here is used to explain the landmass where that society is located, a given geographical area that we can use to designate as the area where that society is found. Where that society is found, there is a landmass. For example, when you talk about a local government, for example, a local government is differentiated from other local government from its boundary. We have Ikore local government. We know the boundary, the communities that make up Ikore local government. So Ikore local government itself can also be called a state, a society of its own. Then we have communities. For example, we have the Omagwa community. Omagwa community has a boundary that you can easily differentiate it from other communities. So that community can be called a society. Now we also have River States. River State has a boundary that demarcates it from other states. Therefore, River State can be classified as a society because it has a boundary. It's bounded. It has a landmass that we can use to distinguish it from other areas. Therefore, it is classified as such. We have the Nigerian states. Nigeria has boundary that we can use to distinguish it from other areas, and therefore Nigeria can be classified. So, for every society to be classified as such, it must have a boundary. It must have a boundary, otherwise known as geographical territory. All right. The next characteristics of a society is that it must have a government. It must have a government. It must have a government, whether be it a local community, be it a hamlet, be it whatever. So far, the people there live together and have a government. It could be traditional government. It could be democratically elected government. So far, there is a body that is in charge of the day-to-day running of affairs of that society. The government provides law, makes law that governs the conduct of members of the society. This is one of the attributes of a society. Thirdly, we have role differentiation and role assignment. Role differentiation and role assignment. In every society, there are roles. There are roles that are performed by members of that society. Now, most of these roles are assigned. Most of these roles are assigned. For example, we have women. There are roles in society that are basically performed by women. There are roles that are performed by men. So every society have institutions or subgroups, and in those subgroups, people perform roles and functions that keep that society functioning. So that is one of the characteristics we use in identifying the society. Then we also have means of communication. Means of communication. For any group to be called a society, it must have a means of communication, means by which the people interact and communicate and understand themselves. This is an important attribute of a society. So for it to be called a society, it must provide means of communication among its members. They will have shared goals. Shared goals. Shared goals. Society is made up of people. Those people have common aspirations and goals which they pursue. They have common aspirations and goals which they pursue. They will have norms and regulatory system. Norms and regulatory system. In every society, there are norms. What norms are? Things that regulate the individuals in the society. They could be law, they could be sanctions too, that make us behave in an orderly manner so that we can live together in peace. So there are norms that regulate our conduct so that we can remain as peaceful members of that society. So norms define what is acceptable and what is unacceptable. Norms defines what is acceptable and what is unacceptable in a given society. Then we have culture. Culture is the totality of the people's way of life. The way their language, the way they dress, their food, all the things they do, their technology, their system of education, all that put together constitute what is called the culture of a society. So every society, it can be identified by their culture. Then we have interrelationship. For any group to be called a society, there is an interrelationship among members of that group, that society. They interact on daily basis. They exchange things. It takes many forms. They worship together. They exchange ideas. They marry. They do everything in common. So all that explains why a group can be classified as a society, because on daily basis they interact, exchange ideas and exchange things in common. So these are the basic attributes of a society upon which people can classify a group as society. Now, having explained and defined society, the next thing we'll look at now is types of society. Types of society. Remember, this explanation and these details are important because we're examining the social context under which education can be planned for a given society. The social context. So in doing that, you must understand what the society means. You must understand the milieu, the social milieu under which a society functions. So that is why we are taking time to look at all this. So having explained the meaning of society or what constitutes a society, the next step is to look at the types of society. To look at the types of society. Now, we will here look at the following types of society: pre-modern society, pre-modern society, pre-modern society. 2. The hunting and gathering societies. Hunting and gathering societies. 3. Pastoral societies. Pastoral societies. 4. Agrarian societies. Agrarian societies. 5. Non-industrial societies. Non-industrial societies. 6. Modern industrial societies. Modern industrial societies. Modern industrial society. And lastly, postmodern societies. Postmodern society. Postmodern society. So let's take them one after the other. Let's take them one after the other. Pre-modern societies. Pre-modern societies. Pre-modern societies are the societies we classified as the traditional societies. The traditional societies. They are the societies that existed before men could read and write. They are societies that existed before men could read and write. We can also call them the pre-literate societies. The pre-literate societies. Now, one of the characteristics of the pre-literate society or pre-modern society is that they were involved in hunting, gathering of their of food. They were involved in pastoral and agrarian type of life. Now they moved from one place to the other, looking for what to eat. They didn't settle down. They were moving from one place to the other, looking for what to eat and all that. You will recall from the Bible example that Abraham and Lot, his brother, moved from one place to the other with their cattle, looking for what to eat. And as they moved, they settled in camps. So those kind of traditional society where men move from one place to the other, looking for what to eat. They could settle down here this year. Another year they move again to another area. They were just settling in that order. So that kind of society is what is called the pre-modern society. The pre-modern society. Now, for all types of society that we are going to look at, one thing that is important about them is that they had a system of education that enabled them to survive in that society. They had a system of education which they transmitted to their younger generation that enabled them to survive in the environment they found themselves. So the pre-modern society that were known to be pastoral, agrarian, and food gathering in nature had a system of education which they transmitted to their younger ones. Now those values of moving from one place to the other were inculcated into their children. The education they required then was the education that enabled them to know, to study the weather, to study the plant growth, and know how to move their cattle from one area to the other. They know when to move, they know when to settle, and all that. Those were all forms of education that were passed to the younger generation. They cultivated the habit of keeping cattle, training cattle. Those were skills that were passed on to the younger generation. It is not every society that can be able to keep cattle. It is not every society that produces all kinds of food. So for every society, for the primitive society, the kind of food they ate during that time were food that they learned from the elders and handed over to the younger generation that enabled them to survive in the environment they found themselves. So in every type of society, education was relevant to keep that society going, and they taught the younger ones what was considered as worthwhile for their collective survival. So that is the bottom line of what we are talking about here. Then the second type of society is the hunting and gathering societies. The hunting and gathering societies. The hunting and gathering societies are purely known as societies that lived on hunting, and gathering of food. Now, if you watch very well, before now, we just came out and saw foodstuffs that we eat, vegetables we eat, we saw okra, saw this, call that, plantain, and all that, we eat them. But originally, the society where this thing originated from, where people were able to identify this species and know that they are edible, and that they give certain protein, that they give certain this thing in the body when they are eating. So you see, the people, they were able to learn through the process of education. They were able to know the various varieties of food, the various varieties of animal that could be domesticated for human consumption, and how to survive in the midst of wild animals and all that. All these were values transmitted during this period in this type of society that the younger ones learned. Remember, in the Bible, children were taught to rear cattle, and in the process of doing that, when wild animals appear to attack those cattle, they have a way of attacking those wild animals. All these were what they learned through the process of education from the elderly ones, and which they transmitted to. So you see, in every given society, in every given type of society, there were much to be learned for the people to survive, for the people's survival. That is the interest of that is our interest in the study of types of society. The education that sustained them in that type of society, and how they were able to live and survive as a result of the education that was provided them there. Now we have the pastoral societies. Like I explained earlier, pastoral, those that rear cattle and all that, I've explained them, So their own type of society was purely pastoral, rearing cattle, moving them from one place to the other, and all that also involves some form of education. So in every type of society, there were relevant education that was inculcated for the members to be able to survive in that society. So the bottom line of what we are saying here is that in every human society that have all the attributes we have explained earlier, there must be education. There must be planned education that enables them to live within that society and survive. So that is the bottom line of what we are saying here. So the next is the agrarian society, agricultural society. Typical example of this kind of society are societies that are found in the upland. For example, in River State, we have the upland communities like the Queries, the Eches, the Ogonis. These ones are people that live on agriculture, and within such communities or such societies, they also had a system of education that enabled them to be able to plant crops. They even developed systems of agriculture within that society. All these are all forms of education that took place to enable them to survive in that society. Even the riverine communities too also had a system of education that enabled them to study the environment and know how to live there, and became fishermen, which those who live in upland cannot be able to do. So one significant feature of every society is that they have a system of education that enabled them to survive within the environment they found themselves. Then the non-industrial societies. The non-industrial society. These are societies that emerged before the industrial period. You will recall that there was a time in Athens, in Greece, in Egypt, when people started developing how people live together. What is called the modern government. How people live together. We were told that democracy began in Athens. People now started organizing society and administering society in such a way that people were now assigned roles on what to do and all that. So that society, when industry have not taken place and when men were organized to ensure that there was peace and order, is known as the non-industrial society. Example of such type of society, we have the ancient Egypt, we have the ancient Greece, we have the Roman Empire and all that. By this time there was no industry. Then we have the modern industrial societies. The modern industrial society came up with the introduction of industries or development of industries in the society. Now at this point, what the human beings were doing through direct labor are now being done using industrial equipments. Industrial equipments. So that society that emerged that time is classified as modern industrial society. When men started using machines, equipments and all that in the production of goods and services. Excuse me. So the modern industrial society is characterized by increase in the use of modern equipment in the production of goods and services for the society. Then lastly we have the postmodern society. After the use of industry, after the use of industries in the production of goods and services, society have also moved to the next level, which we are now. And this level is, we are trying to classify it as the postmodern. The postmodern. It has moved from the use of machine. We are now in the use of computer, which is now called the computer age. This period now is known as the computer age, where things that are done by machines and all that, computer now is being used. So this period is also known as the digital age. The digital age. So we are moving from use of equipment to the use of computer. You know, you are well familiar with the recent argument over the latest technology called the G5, which most countries are already agitated against. These are all the direct result of the digital technology. So we are now in another new type of society is evolving. So you see that from the origin of man, society have evolved from one stage to the other. Beginning from the origin of man, society have evolved from one stage to the other, and in the process several types of society have emerged. So where we are today is what is known as the digital age or the postmodern society with its characteristics. Now, every given type of society comes with its own way of things, which results in a new way of education, a new type of education, which the children must learn to be able to survive in that society. Now, in the modern society, the use of labor in the production of goods and services is shifting hand to the use of equipment and machines. Now, this period, we are now moving again from the use of equipment to the use of computer in the production of goods and services. Now, you can see now, for example, that we now teach through online, which hitherto was not there. So these are new innovations, and for people to be relevant in this period or in this kind of society, they must align themselves with the modern technology, or else they will not be able to fit in. So that is why in every type of emerging society there is always a system of education that will take care of the needs of the individual members of that society and the society at large for the continuity of society. So you see, there is a very strong link between society and education, which is the subject matter of this course. which is the subject matter of discourse. So having explained all that, the meaning of society, the types of society, we will now proceed to look at the sociological perspectives. Sociological perspectives and their educational planning implications. Sociological perspectives and their educational planning implications. Sociological perspectives and their educational planning implications. Take note of what we have done so far. We have looked at the meaning of society. We have looked at the meaning of society and the characteristics of society. We have also looked at the types of society. We have looked at the types of society. And we have come to the understanding that every type of society that there was a given type of education that enabled members of that society to be able to fit into that society. In every society, there has always been in existence a form and type of education that enabled members of that society to survive in that society. That is the crux of this as subject matter of what we are discussing. Now, having done that, we will move into a more advanced discussion. We'll move into a more advanced discussion of how society functions and how that influences the type of education that is provided. How society functions and how that influences or determines the type of education that is planned in that society. So we will be looking at different sociological perspectives. Different sociological perspectives. What we mean by perspective here is the different interpretations or the different explanations given by scholars about society. Sociological perspectives here means the different interpretations, the different explanations by scholars on how society functions, on how society functions. How society functions and how this affects educational planning. How society functions and how this affects educational planning. Now, there are several perspectives. There are several explanations about how society is organized. There are several interpretations of how society is organized. But for the purpose of this course, we will examine only three. We will examine only three. And in each case, draw their educational planning implication. We will examine three, and each of the three will also look at their educational planning implications. Alright, so the three we will be looking at are: one, the consensus perspective. The consensus perspective or theory. Each of these perspectives is also known as theory. And call it consensus perspective or consensus theory. That's the first one. The second one is the action perspective or the action theory. The action perspective or the action theory. The third one we'll be examining is the conflict perspective or the conflict theory. The conflict perspective or the conflict theory of society. Having said that, let's quickly begin to look at the details of each of them. The consensus theory is also known as the functionalist theory of society. The consensus theory is the same thing as the functionalist approach to the study of society. The consensus theory is also known as the functionalist approach to the study of society. The consensus theory is also known as the functionalist approach to the study of society. Now, the scholars who propounded this theory are of the view that the orderliness we find in society today, is the direct result of the society assigning roles to members of the society and groups in the society. The proponents of this theory are of the view that the orderliness we find in society today is the direct result of the roles assigned to the individuals and groups within the society that enables them to function and play their part in such a way that society becomes orderly. So that is why they call this approach the functionalist approach, because according to them, the society have assigned functions. To individual members of the society and groups within the society, that by performing their functions, by each group and each individual performing the function assigned to him by the society becomes orderly. But everybody has a role to play. And that it is when the individual or the group perform his function collectively that the society keeps moving. Society keeps being orderly. But when there is a dysfunction in one part, that dysfunction will affect the function in the other, and therefore it may lead to the collapse of society. So for society to continue to remain functional, the individuals within the society will perform their functions. So they now interpret the society from the system theory angle. They use the system theory to interpret the society. They use the system theory to interpret how the society functions. And by that system theory, what it means is that the society is seen as a whole. An entity. Say, for example, the human body functions as a system. That for the individual human being to function well is dependent on the ability of the component subsystems within the individual human being to be functional. For example, the circulatory system is a subsystem within the human body. The hands, the eyes, the legs are all component part of the body that must work hand in hand and play their part for the human being to be functional. For example, the mouth must perform its function of eating and then taking it into the stomach where the food is grinded and then as absorbed by the different part of the body. If the mouth fails to eat, the other part of the body like hand, the leg, the eyes will be weak and they can't function. Therefore, for the whole body to function well, a component part must perform its function very well. Anyone that fails to perform its function will affect the whole. That is what this theory means. This theory the vehicle can also be used to explain this theory. The motor vehicle. Now, the vehicle has several parts: the tire, the the water, the oil, the engine, the battery, all of them put together make up the different component parts of the vehicle system. Now, for the vehicle to function, the water must be there, the electrical system must be functional, the tires must be functional. If one tire goes out of the vehicle becomes dysfunctional. If the headlamp cannot see, the vehicle can't move in the night. So for the vehicle to move, all the component parts that make up the entire system must be in order. So these are the examples they use to explain how society functions. So the society is now divided into component parts. Those component parts constitute the family, religion, education, the military, the agricultural sector, and what have you. So for society to function well, each of these component parts must play their function well. For example, it is the responsibility assigned to the family as a unit of society for reproductive renewal. So it is in the family that human beings are produced for society. So the family must keep on playing that function, and because the family have been playing that function, that is why there is enough supply of human beings for the society. So the other sectors of the society, like the institutions, political institutions, the economic institutions, religious institutions, which are other components, make use of the human beings produced by the family for them to function. So the human beings the family supplies the church or the religion with people that will enable the religious sector to function. People in government all come from family. The economic sector, people there are all supplied from. So the family must keep performing that function. Now for the polity, that is the political system, now they must keep organizing, provide security, protect life and secure property. They must perform that function. The religion must also make sure that people adhere to religious values to make them to comply to rules and all that. So the religious body perform their own function by instilling in humans the fear of God, and religious indoctrination, which keeps people functioning and behaving well. And see, when all the segments perform their functions, the society is orderly. There won't be any chaos and all that. So everybody performs his own role. So when there is a dysfunction in one, it affects all others. So for example, when there is moral decadence, who do we blame in society? People look at the church, the religious sector. When there is insecurity, where do people look at? People look at government. They have failed in their assigned role. When there is erosion of values, family values, people look back and say the family is not doing its function, and therefore society is suffering for it. That is why it is popularly said that charity begins at home. Good behavior begins at home. So the family is assigned that responsibility to ensure that children they are bringing forth to society are well behaved. So you see, this theory holds the view that people in society, institutions have already been assigned roles and functions which they must perform for society to be orderly. So that is the basis of this theory. Now there are basic assumptions. There are basic assumptions of this theory. There are basic assumptions of this theory which I want you to write down. They include the following. 1. The basic assumptions of the consensus theory. The basic assumptions of the consensus theory. 1. That systems have the property of order and interdependence of parts. That systems have the property of order and interdependence of parts. What this means here is that in every given system, anything that functions as a system, like I explained earlier, all right, anything that functions like that, whether it's a vehicle, human being, society, or whatever that functions as a system that have interdependent parts, that they have the property of order, and that's, they will be in order, they will remain in order so far as there's interdependence. So far there is that overlapping interdependence, there will be orderliness. So what this means here is that in society, so far every group performs their function well, there's what is called orderliness. That's what is called orderliness. So system maintains itself by depending on each other to provide order. That's the number one assumption. Number two assumption: system tend towards self-maintaining order. System tend towards self-maintaining order or equilibrium. System tend towards self-maintaining order or equilibrium. What this means is that in every system, it tries to maintain a balance, what is called self-equilibrium. It balances itself. A system balances itself, and then because a system balances itself, there is bound to be an order. So it maintains a balance. It doesn't weigh itself down. So because there is that maintenance, that's equilibrium, so it maintains itself. So that is how society, according to this theory, that's how society is able to maintain, to achieve a balance and order without deteriorating or without disintegrating. So from time immemorial, from time, society have maintained this balance as a result of the system that is put in place. 3. The system may be static. 3. The system may be static or involved in an ordered process of change. The system may be static or involved in an ordered process of change. Yeah, that what this means is that the system can remain remain as it is, or get involved in an orderly change, in an orderly process of change. It takes time, move gradually and change, or it remains so, or it moves gradually towards change, of which, if you watch society and how society have functioned, you will see that society appears to be static. It is there, it is there, it has been there, and it will always be there. But one thing that is sure, so that's the static nature of society. It has always been there and it has remained there. But there's another feature, is that even though society has been there, it has moved towards a process of change. It has never been the same. Remember, we have moved from hunting, agrarian, and to. So that's what that clause tries to explain. Although static in nature, but it progresses towards change, and there has always been change in every society. So this is one of the basic assumptions of the theorist. Then number 4, that the nature of one part of the system has an impact on the form that, take that again, the nature of one part of the system has an impact, the nature of one part of the system has an impact on the form that the other part can take. The nature of one part of the system has an impact on the form that the other part can take. Now, the nature of the family structure we have will have an effect on the persons that will be in other society institutions. The character you develop from your family, you carry it upward. It affects the position you occupy as a principal, as a teacher, and all that. The belief system you take from the church, it affects how you relate with other people in society, in an office. You know. So the order in one subsystem also affects order in the other system. So it brings about a balance. It brings about a balance in society. Then 5, systems maintain boundaries with their environment. Systems maintain boundaries with their environment. Systems maintain boundaries with their environment. Now, in every given society, what they are known for is the territorial area, that is used to demarcate and distinguish them. Now, the system here, say for example in Nigeria, is different from the system elsewhere. The system here is different from system elsewhere. So there is a boundary for let's come to the local area again. A particular community that have their subsystems and how they operate have boundary with others and how they operate. So there is a boundary between each system and their environment. The system and environment have demarcation, and they are also all interdependent for the survival of the other. Then number 6, allocation and integration. Allocation and integration are two fundamental processes necessary for a given state of equilibrium of a system. Take that again. Allocation and integration are two fundamental processes necessary for a given state of equilibrium of a system. Allocation and integration. Allocation of function. For example, the family performs its function. Educational institutions perform their function. But they integrate. Now, when the family subsystem integrate with educational system, the educational system integrates with the political system. The political system integrates with the economic system. The economic system integrates in that order. So what will result? Equilibrium. Bring about a balance. Stability. It brings about stability. So you see, everywhere is stable because there is an integration. First, allocation of responsibilities. First, allocation. Family, this is your responsibility. Religion, this is your responsibility. Now, when everybody does theirs, they integrate. So there is a strong relationship between the family and the religion, between religion and the political system, between the family and the political system, between the political system and the economy, between the family and the economy. So there is that integration resulting from the allocation of functions, which now stabilizes the society and everywhere remains orderly. So that's the number 6 assumption there. Then number 7 assumption is that systems tend towards self-maintenance. Systems tend towards self-maintenance. Number 7, systems tend towards self-maintenance, involving the maintenance of boundaries and of relationship of parts to the whole, control of environment, and control of tendencies towards change. Take note again, systems tend towards self-maintenance. Systems tend towards self-maintenance, involving the maintenance of boundaries and of relationship of parts to the whole, So the message here is that in every system, it tends towards self-sustenance and self-maintenance. The system maintains itself. The system maintains itself. Take for example the human body. The human body have a way of maintaining its system for survival. So that is why wherever you put human being, wherever you send human being, you have a way of surviving in that environment. It has a way. That's how it was created. The system of human being was created. So that's why you can find human beings in all parts of the world and they survive, because they have self-maintaining arrangement within them. So that's what he's saying, that in every system it has that self-maintaining way of regulating itself for survival. So society have a way of self-regulating itself and maintaining order, and that's why society has always remained there, always been there. No matter all the conflict, no matter all the society has always remained there. Now, those are the assumptions of the consensus theory or the functionalist theory. Having explained all that, having explained these details about the consensus theory, the question now is, what are the educational planning implications? What are the educational planning implications of this theory? What are the educational planning implications of this theory? Now, for us to understand the educational planning implications of this theory, let us again recall what this theory postulates. What is the main idea of this theory? The main idea of this theory is that society has assigned responsibilities to groups, individuals in the society. What does that mean? It means that roles have been defined. Roles have been defined. It means that roles have been defined and assigned. It's already known. What you will do is already known. What the man should do is already known. What women should do is already known. What government should do is already known. What church should do is already known. What all the sectors should do is already known and handed down by the society. You know, so what does this mean in educational planning? So what it means is that values, rules, things that will be learned in school is already provided. It's already provided. So what it means is that these things has been already legitimized. It has been legitimized. So what the school, what the educational planning activity should do now is to plan them in accordance of how it has been provided by society. You must have to plan education to reflect that social structure, to reflect that arrangement. It is given that women should play this role, and therefore children should learn how to perform that role. It is given that family should do this, and therefore children should. So society have already assigned rules. So what educational planning should do is, how do we plan education to reflect these things that society have ordered, as society have ordered it. So what it means is that the educational planning process will have to plan education in such a way that citizens will internalize these society-giving functions, so that members of society will internalize these society-giving responsibilities and learn them, hook, line, and sinker. So it is popularly said that educational planning, then the job of educational planning activity here is by providing means of perpetuating and reinforcing societal hegemony. What educational planning does here in this kind of environment, this kind of society, is to plan education in such a way that it perpetuates and reinforces the desired societal hegemony by inculcating in the children from the beginning the essential things that collective life demands, that society demands. Plan those things how society has provided them and order that it should be done. Plan it and ensure that it is taught in accordance with that. So the subject matter of educational planning here is to do what? To legitimize rather than challenge the existing order. To legitimize rather than challenge the existing status quo. So in this kind of society, since society has already provided that this is the role that should be performed, and this is how, so what educational planners should do is just to plan education in accordance with all that and ensure that these things are legitimized and people learn the existing status quo. So in essence, what it means here is that the education to be provided for citizens will be that conservative type of education. Conservative type of education. Let me give you an example. Now, because of the religious indoctrination that we have been taught in the churches, it is believed that you must obey those in government because they are put there by God. That is the instruction from the church, and that is what the curriculum should, the educational planner should do. Plan the curriculum in that way. Let people learn that this is what should bring order. So God has provided them and put them in authority. Therefore, they should learn how to obey. He went further to tell us, pray for them. So you see the males learning what they consider to be masculine functions as provided by society. So the women have their own functions. So this has gone a long way to affect what is taught in school. Some subjects are now seen as masculine, some subjects are seen as feminine. So women, these are the areas you should learn. Men, these are the areas you should learn, because society have provided that it should so be. That is where the theory and the belief that where we have classified men as the head of the family, because that's what society have provided, and that's what we teach. Men remain, churches teach it. The men remain the head of the family. So they are called the breadwinner. So even when the woman earns the income that sustains the family, because we have so learned, so it is so assumed that the man is the head, and therefore every respect should be accorded him. So we teach that, and people keep learning it. And so that's the educational planning implication of this theory. So what education does here, what educational planning activity does here, is the transmission of the cultural heritage that has been there from one generation to the other, to maintain stability, to maintain equilibrium. So in society, any society that sees this as their theoretical base, as the theoretical base of that society, this is how they will plan their education. The education will appear to be conservative in nature. People will only learn what is provided. They will not go beyond that. They will not question the authority. They will not question existence. They will see everything. They will legitimize the process using education. So that's the educational planning implication of this kind of society, where this theory is seen as the major ideological base of that society. If that is understood, let's proceed to the next theory. The next theory is the action theory, or the action perspective. The action theory or the action perspective. Now, remember that the first theory we examined now try to explain that it is the society that assign roles to the individual and groups in the society, which brings about orderliness. That's what consensus theory says. That society assigns roles to the individuals and groups in society, from where they perform those roles, and then society achieves equilibrium or balance. Now, this theory is the reverse, the opposite of that theory. The reverse. Now, this theory upholds that for you to understand society, you must understand it from the angle of the individual first. You must understand it from the angle of the individual first. That is the actions of the individual in the society that give meaning to society, and not the reverse. Let me take that again. For you to understand how society functions and works, that you must understand it from the actions of the individual members in the society. That is the action of the individual members in the society that gives meaning to what becomes a society, or gives meaning to how order is achieved in society, not the reverse. So they say for you to understand society, you must understand how the actions of men in the society produce society and produce order. How the actions of the individuals in society, actions of men in society, produce society itself and produce order, not the reverse. That it is the action of men or individuals in society that regulate and constrain affairs of people in society. So the theory rejects the notion that puts society above and external to the individual. Remember, in the other first consensus theory, the individual appears to be external. That is, the society is already there, has already put everything in place, and then before the individual comes in. So the individual is external to the society. But here, the reverse is the case. This notion is rejected by the action theory. That you can only understand society when you understand first the actions of men that led to the type of society you have. So the focus here is on the individual and the scale of interaction that goes on at the individual level. The interaction that goes on at the individual level that results to the larger society. That's where the action, the unit of action is at the individual level. The actions and inactions of the individual results in what becomes known as societal activities. So that it is the action of one or more, few or many, that collective notion finds meaning. It is beginning from the action of one single individual or group or larger listen that gives meaning to the larger society. Say, for example, what we call today Christianity is just by the single action of the arrival of Christ, the coming of Christ, that gave birth to Christianity. So if Christ wasn't born in the first instance, there wouldn't have been anything as Christianity. So it's by that action. See, take it from the action of the individual. It is from that action that gave rise to the religious practice of Christianity. It is the action of the birth of Muhammad that resulted in Islam. If Muhammad wasn't born, there wouldn't have been anything like Islam. If Christ wasn't born, there wouldn't have been anything like Christianity. So in that order, let me give you another example. In a community in Ijo, one of the Ijo communities, they do not eat snail. They don't eat snail. Why don't they eat snail? The chief of that community had come to the farm with his wife. On their way back from the farm, they had picked snails. And put in their table. So as they were paddling, there was quarrel between husband and wife. And the chief had told the wife, "Woman, keep quiet. You don't sigh when I'm talking." The wife sighed. As the argument continued, the woman sighed the second time, and the man warned the wife. Now, I am
your husband. If you sigh again, you're going to chop off your head. The woman now maintained order and kept quiet. Unfortunately, the snails they had picked in their boat made their sign. The man mistakenly took that snail sign to be disobedience from the wife, and in anger took his knife and cut off the wife's head and continued paddling home. Somewhere along the line, he noticed that the snails made that sign and repeated that sign again. He now recognized that he had killed the wife in error, thinking that the wife had signed in disobedience, not knowing that it was snails. So when he got home, he recounted the story of what happened, and there and then the community decreed that nobody should eat snail again in that community. That is the bad omen. Till today, they don't eat snail. So it is the action of the chief that culminated into that community not eating snail, which is now part of their tradition. And the children in that community now have learned that it has been transmitted from one generation to the other, and it has gotten to this generation. They don't eat snail. So the proponents of this theory are saying that you can only understand society from the actions of men, which resulted in what happens in society, not the reverse. So these are typical examples of how actions of men have resulted in what we practice in society. Was it not the direct result of the action of people that are giving rise to what we now call in our dictionary today that we call wazobia? Wazobia is a coinage of wa standing for the Igbo com, zo Hausa com, bia wa Yoruba com, zo Hausa com, bia Igbo com, put together to give wazobia, which means com. Over time, the children that will come after us will begin to use it as a language of to mean com. It is the direct action of people today that's giving rise to that. Now, the state we call Bayelsa, before now was not there. It wasn't there. That word Bayelsa is a coinage derived from the major local governments that formed that area, which of course will include Brass, Yenegwe, Sabama. What are they? If you coin all of them together, it gives you the name Bayelsa. And that name have remained. People will learn it. So it is the action of men that have given rise to that. Not that society has given us certain responsibility. No. What we call religious practices today is the action of men that try to investigate the spiritual realm and come to the conclusion that there must be a supreme being, and that now resulted in the worship of gods and supreme deity called God. So it is not that society has given assignment to religion to perform its role. No, it's rather the direct outcome of men's actions and activities that has given rise to what we see today. How did agriculture come about if not that the early man discovered farming? The action of the early man by discovering agriculture resulted in what is now known as agricultural practice. The various economic systems are also the direct result of all that. The language we speak is the direct result of coinage as a result of interaction of people. So the action theory is saying that for you to understand how society functions, you must understand how the actions of men give meaning to social interpretation. Now, this theory have some basic assumptions, like the consensus theory, and which I want you to take down. The basic assumptions of the theory include: 1. Are you with me? The basic assumptions of the theory include: 1. Human beings, unlike lower animals, are naturally endowed with the capacity for thought. Human beings, unlike lower animals, are naturally endowed with the capacity for thought. That human beings found in society have the capacity to think. It is this their thinking that gives meaning to the actions they take, and society emerge from there. 2. The capacity for thought is shaped by social interaction. Our ability to think is refined when we interact with people, and when that happens, it gives a lot of meaning in society. To keep refining what our actions, keep refining our attitude, keep giving meaning to what we do. So you see, the system of government we have today is different from what we had before. The system of religious worship today is different from, because of the interaction people have. Things change. So that's what this theory is saying. That's what this place is saying. The capacity of thought is shaped by social interaction. I will keep interacting with one another. We keep changing in our attitude and approaches to life and to things generally, including education. Then 3. In social interactions, people learn the meanings and symbols that allow them to exercise their distinct human capacity. In social interactions, people learn the meanings and the symbols that allow them to exercise their distinctive human capacity. So, because we interact among each other, we exercise that power of thinking and use it to distinguish ourselves and invent new way of doing things. Bring about changes, bring about orderliness and all that. So you see, it is human oriented. Society is human oriented. Now, every place where human beings have found themselves, they have used this ingenuity to transform the society. Not that society gave them a function to perform. No. So let's proceed. Number 4 now. Number 4. Meanings and symbols allow people to carry out. Okay, I've said that. So there's number 5 now. Number 5. People are able to modify or alter the meanings and symbols that they use in action and interaction on the basis of their interpretation of the situation. Let me take that again. People are able to modify. Or alter. People are able to modify or alter the meanings and symbols that they use in action. People are able to modify or alter the meanings and symbols that they use in action and interaction on the basis of their interpretation of the situation. People are able to modify or alter the meanings and symbols that they. So we have that capacity to alter and modify things as a result of the way we interact with people. We're able to modify the way we do things, the way we relate with others. So that is why you have seen, through that power, through that capacity, we have been able to effect changes in society. We have been able to change our method of production, the method of rendering services. So it is through human ingenuity that computer is discovered, that the means of communication is modified, the way we relate to people is modified. It is through means of interaction and our power of thought that we no longer allow certain traditional practices to continue, because we have come to be reasonable to know that we need to make changes here and there, not the other way around. So that's what the point is assuming. Now, number 6. People are able to make these modifications. People are able to make these modifications and alterations. People are able to make these modifications and alterations because impact, P-A-R-T, because impact of their ability, impact because of their ability, impact because of their ability to interact with themselves, their ability to interact with themselves, which allow them to examine possible causes of action, which allow them to examine possible causes of action, assess their relative advantages and disadvantages, and then choose one, which allows them to examine possible causes of action, assess their relative advantage and disadvantages, and then choose one. Because we are rational human beings. So because of the way we interact with people, we are able to look at what is good and what is bad and choose from what we think is good. That is why it is the human being that has been able to evolve and develop what is called morality, the good and the bad, through our interaction with people. We now know that this is good or this is bad. We now know what is justice and what is injustice. They are all human inventions. So justice is not in existence and then society gave it all to practice. No, it is humans in society that invent justice, that came up with the idea because of their interaction. Things like equity, fair play, and all that, they are all human inventions that provided orderliness in society as a result of our interaction with each other. Now, take other example. It is because of our interactions and the difficulties we encounter that has resulted to what we call zoning in political position. We have discovered that we have fought a war over this and all that. This is creating problem for us. Therefore, let us come up with this formula of zoning. Have you seen it? Now, it is because of this type of reasoning that we have the power, and as a result of interactions, that we have come up with what is called educational imbalance. We know the zones that are educationally imbalanced, and therefore try to make amendment, try to come up with new educational philosophy that will try to bridge that imbalance. It is the action of men that produces the kind of society that is in place. So finally, number 7 of that, of the assumption. The intertwined pattern of action and interaction make up group and society. The intertwined pattern of action and interaction make up group and society. So the way we interact as group, the intertwined nature of the interaction that takes place in society make up what is called group and society. So is it not because of the way religious groups intertwine in their interaction, the intertwined nature of their interaction, that are giving rise to different religious sects? People with similar ideas, people with similar belief, they now form a sect within the religious sect. So even within the Christendom, there are sects based on the ideas they share, based on the interaction that takes place among them. They now become their own sect. So we have the Roman Catholic, we have the Anglican, we have the Pentecostal. Even among the Pentecostal, we still have splinter groups based on, as they interact, they intertwine and come up with that group. So you can see that's how society has evolved. Alright, so having said that, those are some assumptions. So what are the educational planning implications of this theory? What are the educational planning implications of this theory? Now, it has the following educational planning implication. One, in planning education, curriculum content, teaching method, values, and learning activities are not preconceptions or stereotypes. What this theory means that in the planning of education, the method of teaching, the curriculum content, unlike the consensus the curriculum content, the method of teaching, the learning activities are not stereotypes. They are not preconceived ideas that are already put in place so that teachers will just teach them as they are. They are not conservative in nature. They could change with time. They could change as a result of interactions. They could change as people share ideas. A new way comes up. Two, curriculum planning must reflect present realities as it affects a given society. The situation on ground, the present situation you have found yourself will determine the curriculum content of what is to be taught. Now, we have the coronavirus pandemic ravaging the world. This situation on hand call for education system, an education that will bring a stop or that will teach people how to prevent it, and that's what is happening. So people are now learning how to wash their hands, social distancing, and all that. There are new forms of education that have come that people will learn in order to survive this situation. So it is not that there is a stereotype thing kept in place that you must learn them like that as provided in this. No, the present situation calls for certain action, and this is inculcated in the education system. So curriculum planning must reflect present realities as it affects a given society. The reality we have found ourselves is what should determine the educational content, what we teach. Alright, so these are the major implications of this theory, and that brings us to the end of this theory. Now, each of what I have presented here can be elaborated as you read your text and search online. You add more knowledge, more things, uncover more things about each of these theories. Now, the last but not the least theory of how scholars perceive society and interpret society is the conflict theory. The conflict theory or the conflict perspective. The conflict theory or the conflict perspective. Now, the conflict theory is of the view that for us to understand how society functions, first, we must understand the conflict situations that is permanently in society. An understanding of the society must first begin with the understanding of the conflict situation that is found in society. That from time immemorial it has always been conflict that has been there between one group against the other. And in this case, they call it the haves and they have not. So they say that in society there's what they call the binary opposition. Opposition between two groups. That in every given society there has always been two groups. Those that have and those that don't have. And that there has always been tendency for those that have to oppress those that don't have. And when those that don't have react against those that oppress them, that it will always result to a new type of society. And that for you to understand how society functions, you must understand it from that angle. the angle of production of goods and services, and how few individuals have arranged themselves or organized themselves to be in charge of the means of production of goods and services, and that those who are in charge of the means of production of goods and services determines what happens in society and what happens to the rest members of society. So they describe society from the angle of what they call binary opposition. Binary opposition. So the basic assumption of this theory include the following. The basic assumptions of this theory include the following. 1. The basic assumption of this theory include the following. 1. Social order is founded on the concept of binary opposition. Social order is founded on the concept of binary opposition. Social order is founded on the concept of binary opposition. Now, the binary opposition, as I've explained, is opposition that goes on between one group or the other. These groups are known as those that have and those that do not have. Those that have and those that do not have. You can call them the rich and the poor. Those that control the means of production, and those that are engaged in the production itself. Those that control the means and those that are engaged in the production. Those that control the means of production and those that are engaged in the production proper. Those that control the means of production determines what happens to those who produce those this. So that they organize themselves in such a way that they are in charge of the economic structure, they are in charge of the political structure, they are also in charge of the religious structure, they are in charge of the entire setup, and therefore determines what happens in society. They determine everything. And by implication, they also determine the education system. They determine what is provided in education. They fund education. So what they ask you to teach is what you teach. What they produce as plan blueprint for education is what you must teach. So, for example, they promote what is called capitalist system, capitalism, and therefore teach everything that has to do with capitalism in the school system. And the children imbibe that, and that's the kind of society that will emerge. Alright, number 2. That social order is achieved through a continued process of disputed interaction. That social order is achieved through a continued process of disputed interaction between men, of sectional struggles and the imposition of order by those who win power. So what this is saying is that there is always a struggle, conflict between men, sectional groupings, or those who are in charge of power. And these have permeated into the minds of people in society. That is why the ordinary man in society sees those in government as oppressors. And there has always been that conflict situation. They are always challenging the authority. Why do people disobey law, disobey rules? It's because they see that when you are oppressing me. And there are every indication that people are being oppressed. They determine your salary. They determine what is paid you after you have done all the production. If you check your contribution to the company you work or to the institutions you work, you calculate the profit you make to that institution and calculate how much you are paid, you will resign. They determine everything. They also determine your retirement. They also determine what will pay you. You don't have any say. You don't have any say. So you see, and you are doing that, what they call suffering and smiling. Suffering and smiling. You are doing that and doing it. Suffering and smiling. They give you what can only sustain you. What people call, some people call minimum wage, some people call living wage. Minimum and living wage. What you are earning is just a mere minimum. What will sustain you, not so what will keep you living. You don't have any say about that. The economic system, you don't have any say about that. The education system, you don't have any say about that. The religious system, you don't have any say about that. So they have put those things in place and continue to checkmate the narrative. So that is the conflict situation that, so this theory try to look at society from this angle, and then you will understand how society is organized. Any attempt to go against it, you are quelled with your security. Any attempt to change the order, you are quelled with security. So they have the army, they have the police, all the forces put in place. They control them and use it to maintain order. So number 3 of the assumption that conflict between the haves and have not, or owners of the means of production, that there's always a conflict between the have and the have not and owners of the means of production. Conflict situations is always there between those who have and those who do not have, or those who have, who control the means of production. So there's always conflict between them. What I said earlier, what I called earlier as binary opposition. Binary opposition. Two groups. And number 4, those who win power. There's always a conflict between those who win power, which are very few, of course, within the group. Those who win power within the group shape, directs, and defines rules governing the conduct of other members. In the conflict situation, or conflicting system, or in this theory, upholds that those who win power are the ones who are in charge of the group, because they shape, they direct, and define the rules governing the conduct of other members of the group. So they make laws, they make rules that you must obey. Imagine a situation where, for example, those who are in this category of people, this category that is in charge of, could be interested in a land in my community, a land in my community, a natural inheritance from my community. By birth, that is where nature has placed me. And because these few people who are in authority want to collect that land, they'll come up with a law. They may call it land use decree, or call it whatever name, and then come on that land, they collect that land. And when they collect the land, what do? They will distribute it among themselves. They may call it government reservation area, and then the owners of the land are disappropriated of the land by law. They use law. You must obey the law. If you don't, they use coercion. So see this conflict theories are saying, for you to understand society, you must understand it from this angle, that only very few control the economy, control the system, and what they use in controlling the system is by making rules, making regulations that makes everybody to comply and obey. So whatever they give you as education is what you must imbibe. All right. Number 5 of the theory has it that finding the ways in which these competing differences and interests are either resolved or controlled is the true goal of social analysis. Now, in this situation, for us to really know how society is ordered, is to be able to understand truly how these things are done. So most people who have imbibed that culture of believing that this is the kind of society and that is how it. No, understand it by understanding the gimmicks that plays on among those that controls, those who have and those who do not have. That is why there's always conflicts in society. It has resulted into people, those who have, building houses and fencing themselves up. This society fences themselves up, put themselves in prison. So it's because they are afraid of the way they have ordered society that people will revolt, people will go after them, and that's why people men carry arms and civil disobedience. That's why some people say no, society belongs to all of us, and therefore they are agitating. So we have the Niger Delta militants, we have the Old People's Congress, we have the Boko Haram. They are all agitations, people's expression of anger over the way goods and services are shared, over the way men control the affairs of society unjustly. And as I speak here, majority of the populace are not happy. They are angry. They are looking for one opportunity or the other. Remember Sowore, who called for revolution? What happened to him? He was thrown in jail. So they have the means of controlling. So you now, who are you? For you to go and begin to, they put you in prison. Sowore was lucky that people spoke on his behalf and eventually was brought out. There are people who are languishing in prison because nobody to speak for them. So for you to understand how society functions, you must understand it from the angle of this social analysis of the interplay of power among those who control the means of production. So when we talk about them here, it is not just those who are in government, including religious leaders. They are part of that class. They have been able to classify the society, distinguish society into class. And so as soon as you are into that, there are few class, then the rest of the people are neglected. You just try to organize and see how you can control their behavior. Finish. So they control the behavior of people on the other side and make them behave. So all that you do today, you are doing it in compliance, in obedience to what the rule they have put in place for it to be ordered. And that's how society is able to achieve order. Alright. So having said that, what are the educational planning implications of this theory? The educational planning implication of this theory. Here, education functions as a means of controlling and transmitting the relationship that goes on between those that have and those that not have, and then maintain it there. They use education to teach this. Now, when we talk about education here, it's not just schooling education, but in the churches. That's why the churches will preach. It is the class, the echelon, the class, the top class in the church that tells you that let us pray for our leaders, because they don't want you to cause problem. They will see the leaders and recognize them as people that are put there by God, and therefore they should be prayed for. God put them in authority. Any challenge against them, you are challenging God. So tell me why you want to challenge them and then offend God. So everybody is compliant. You are praying for those who are even stealing your resources, because that's the arrangement. That's what they have put in place to get your loyalty. You can't query it. You have already been taught that by education. Education has should be planned by that. So they teach you what. So that is why the exam is strictly based on what those in government have provided. So we now have what is called the National Policy on Education, Federal Republic of Nigeria, National Policy on Education. You will teach it as it is provided. You can't go out there. You know. 2. Education is used as a means of indoctrinating class structure and nurturing and socializing the young ones to be subservient in society. You see, so the way they have planned education here, the way they plan education here is to produce the kind of citizen that will be subservient. You must obey, obedient, law abiding. That's what we teach. That's what has been planned. They will tell you that this is the function of this so that you comply. So that's the kind of, in a conflicting situation, those in authority plan education to indoctrinate the followers. Put certain stuff into your head. You can't query authority. They will teach you that when you go to school will give you enablement, empowerment to proceed and all that. But when you look at it very well, it is a vicious circle of poverty that they promote. Vicious circle of poverty that is promoted. They tell you move from one to where many people have moved from poverty to. And the wealth and means of production is shared among that class. So they are preparing their children to hand over to their children. That is why they could amass wealth and store it somewhere for the benefit of their children and their family. The masses keep keeping you in your state. So in your poor state, what will you do? You cannot be able to challenge anybody. So you remain there. Alright, number 3. Certain cultural beliefs and practices which support capitalism are created through education and transmitted. So you see, in school we teach capitalism and teach you the practices and teach you that is the system Nigeria, capitalism, tell you the advantages and all that, and then imbibe it. People see it. So that is why the kind of business we do today is that orientation. It's capitalist orientation. You invest money, you make profit, and in the process you become this. How many people have been able to invest and become so rich? So you can see, and so that's the indoctrination that I put into business. And then what is the business we engage in? The business of buying and selling the goods produced by the rich. That's what we do. Watch around. The major business that people do around is buying and selling. Check everywhere. Much of the people are not involved in production of goods and services. What we do is to buy and sell goods already produced by the rich. So any eventuality, it is the poor that suffers. So you have even been so indoctrinated that it has become part of us that when they close the boundary between us and other countries, we suffer. The poor will begin to cry. We suffer because they have made us to imbibe that culture of buying and selling. We can't produce. We can't get into production. We no longer think as something we can do. We rely on what they can provide us. So these are the situations that have always promoted conflict in society. And educational planning in this side of society takes this pattern. 4. Educational planning is seen as an instrument manipulated by those in power to perpetuate their position. Educational planning becomes an instrument they use in perpetuating their position. Because the things you will teach, you pass the exam, get 5 credits, you go to school. Get 5 credits, you go to school. And the type of school they will send your children are those that they will never make 5 credits. But their children go to very good schools, where in one city they get their 5 credits and off they go. So even the most intelligent child that comes from a poor man might not have the opportunity of going to school, actualizing his dreams. What their children have explicit listen to go to the best school in the world. So when they prepare, then they come back and take over from there. So that they use education as an instrument to perpetually keep you in poverty. They will say, oh no, we will provide free education. Yeah, of course they have provided free education. Everywhere is going to free education. What kind of free education is provided? You know, so it's a tool they have used to use you, to perpetually keep you in bondage. All right, then finally the state. So when they put this kind of thing in place, the state, that's the government, then take control, not just the educational institutions, but also the type of knowledge that is provided in these institutions. So they build schools, they build the schools. When they build schools, they provide what will be taught in these schools, and teachers must comply and teach in accordance. The textbooks were written by them, government approved textbooks, is it not? So the textbook will teach what they want to be taught, nothing else. Somewhere was able to talk about revolution. Have you seen any textbook teaching about revolution? How to organize revolution, how to overthrow government that is not performing? No. What they always teach you is, you know, through democratic means. Through democratic means. So we learn democracy in school. Democracy is a system of government by majority, by the popular wish of the people. How many of the government is there by popular wish? Becomes the question. You know, so they also put in place instruments that will make them to perpetually remain. Each time they do election, it is them that will be elected. Check the class of people that are always elected. You never can see a poor man moving to be elected into position. How will you do it? So these are things that promote conflicts and have created permanent conflict situation in society. So my dear students, these are the basic things, the basic theories on how societies could be founded. Any society that leans towards any of these theoretical positions, it is the same way that the education system of that society will tilt. That's the implication here. Each of these theoretical positions that have been explained here, each of these three, any society that leans towards each will, the educational ideology of that society will tilt towards this system. However, most societies are found to combine most of this together. So when you examine Nigeria, for example, you will see the consensus approach in some aspect. You will see the action theory in some aspect, and you see the conflict perspective. So we cannot actually demarcate where this begins and ends, the other begin. So there is a combination of all the approaches in most societies. So we cannot say that a given society is purely capitalist or socialist or whatever, or a particular society is found to operate the consensus theory or the action theory or the conflict theory. But most often what we have is a combination of all the theories. But for the educational planner as you are, it is good for you to have this understanding. It's good for you to have this understanding so that you can understand how society functions and the educational planning implication of all the theoretical positions as educational planners, so that when you are in a position to plan, you now see the factors that affects you, the variables that affect your planning ability. You must plan in accordance with what the society wants. And so that's how the theoretical positions of these scholars determines the type of education that a given society can offer to its citizens. On that note, my dear students, I think we'll end today's class here. Next time we'll continue from there. Continue to remain safe. Observe all the instructions, as I said earlier. Social distancing. Try and wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers, and then remain at home. We need to see ourselves as school resumes. Anytime the situation becomes conducive for us to move back to class. Thank you, and God bless you.